I'd like to welcome you to the Pawtucket School Committee meeting on December 15th, 2020 at 6:31 p.m. Ms. List, please take a roll call.
Ms. Bonolo?
Here.
Ms. Doobie?
Here.
Ms. Grant?
Here.
Mr. Knight?
Here.
Mr. Larby?
Here.
Mr. Marino?
Here.
Mr. Charbonneau?
Here, please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We'll do public participation. Ms. List, has anyone signed up?
Yes. Ms. Gigi Mello?
All right. Hirsch, if you could please connect with Miss Mello.
We'll do that right now. Miss Listed, she say whether she was connected by phone or computer?
She did not.
Okay. Sorry, trying to find her. She might be on a phone call. Ms. Bello, if you could email me with your contact information, I could let you in if it was a phone number. I'll watch my email.
I'm sending her an email as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we can go back to public input period if we ever get a hold of her.
Attorney Conley, can you, thank you, Mr. Knight. Attorney Conley, can you weigh in on that? Are we able to revert back to public participation later in the meeting?
Yes, yes, you are, Mr. Chairman. You just need a motion at the appropriate time to revert to public participation.
Thank you. Mr. Knight, point well taken, but I do want to give Ms. Mello another minute or two in the event that her public participation, I'm sure it's relative to one of the agenda items on the docket this evening. So I would hate to get into that discussion and or action item without having Ms. Mello the opportunity to publicly comment on that. So great point, Mr. Knight. I do want to give Ms. Mello just a minute or two.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Ms. Mello responded that she's on video.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bliss. Hirsch, does that help you at all?
I'm trying to find how she's logged in, what her screen name is on the thing. That's what I'm looking for right now. I do not see. Miss Liz, maybe she could send you an email. How she's logged on to the computer. I'm trying to find her on the list, but I do not see her.
I just asked her for her ID or screen name.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right.
Also, Mr. Chairman, Mr.
Yeah.
Joe Brown is on the call as well.
Okay. Is Mr. Brown signed up for public participation as well?
It's just a message that he is on the call.
Okay, thank you. And again, I appreciate everybody's patience. I think public participation is a critical part of our process and of our meeting. So we will hang until we exhaust efforts to reach Miss Mello.
Mr. Chairman, maybe Mr. Crisino could let everybody in for the duration of public participation.
I believe everyone is in, Mr. Knight, but we can certainly, once he's done reading Miss Mello, we can ensure that everybody has been in.
Thank you, Mr. Marino. I think I'm going to let somebody in right now. I think this may be Gigi. Let me. Is this Miss Mello that I just allowed in?
She's muted if it is, so
Yeah.
Gigi, if that's your, if it's just the two Gs, then you're muted right now.
Miss Mello, are you there?
Just in case she's on a phone, is there a shortcut way to unmute on a phone? For anyone who connects via phone to Zoom, could they easily talk about how to do it?
I believe it's *6.
*6 if you're dialed in, if you're using the internet audio, you tap the bottom of the phone and you'll see the microphone. Just click on that and it will unmute you.
I'm also asking her to unmute one of the things that she gets to pop up. I did ask her to raise her hand in the call as well.
All right, all right, we are 7 minutes in. We will give it another minute and we will move along. We can skip the public participation portion and move on and come back to it. I did want to hear from Miss Mello, but I am cognizant of the fact that there are others on the line and everyone's time is valuable.
Mr. Conley, Mr. Chairman, if Gigi is able to connect and we're in the middle of discussion of an item, is it possible to listen to public participation, or is it only after or before an item on the agenda?
I'll defer to Attorney Conley.
By way of motion, in the middle of a discussion on a topic, you can choose to go back to public participation. After you come out of public participation, you need to go back to that same piece on the agenda. You can't go to a different one.
All right, at this point, I'd entertain a motion to return to public participation later on in the meeting.
Second. Oh, so moved.
Motion made Ms. Bonolo and Ms. Grant to move on with public participation at a later time in the meeting, seconded by Ms. Doobie. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Ms. Grant, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, do you think maybe we could just ask Miss Mello if she could maybe email Miss Liss her comments if she's having these problems, these technical problems?
She certainly can. I don't want to hold up the meeting any longer while she puts together that email. So Ms. Mello, if you can hear us and you'd like to email your thoughts to Ms. List, Ms. List will read them to us during the meeting. But at this point, I think we've given it enough time and we need to move on with the meeting. There's a motion on.
I agree.
It's been seconded. Any other discussion on moving public participation? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, approval of previous meeting minutes from 12/3/2020.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to approve the minutes of 12/3/2020 by Mr. Marino, seconded by Ms. Grant. Discussion on the minutes? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Old business action discussion items. School reopening plan review and possible modifications. Superintendent, are you going to take this one?
Myself. Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So I was hoping to have this discussion based on the last meeting where the school committee made a decision to, based on the, COVID conditions in our community, a decision to put us into a distance learning, all students at this time. And so I would like to discuss what I believe is the best thing for us to do moving forward and open that up for discussion and see if the committee is in agreement with that. So as you know, the state has provided us with air purifiers. Those were picked up, I believe, last week. John and his team, facilities, and the custodians at each of the 11 buildings that aren't in use have unboxed them all, got them up and running. And John is on the call, so if you'd like to hear from him directly, I would, defer to him. But from what he has told me is that they had them up and running for the past couple of days. Now, granted, we don't have all the children in school, the teachers aren't all in school, the computers aren't all in school, but based on what we have heard from the state as far as the low amps that these draw, and based on the facilities, setting them up and seeing where they stand, they are functioning and they did not run into any issues that they were aware of. The state has asked, that RIDO Ed Op Center has asked to return and look at these 11 buildings on, I believe it's Friday. They're going to walk through with our facilities. They would like to see those up and running. So that is happening. Now, with that being said, as we move forward into the new year, and we do see at this current time that the COVID conditions are increasing, so it's my agreement that the distance learning that we are currently in is the best route for us and the safest at this time. However, as we do move into the year with a vaccine on the horizon, there's certain preparations that need to take place for us to prepare regardless of when the actual physical date of return of students. So it would be my expectation that while we are off on this distance learning time, so I would say essentially starting tomorrow over the next few weeks, that we start to prepare by positioning ourselves for an in-person return in a gradual when the conditions are right. So in order to do that, there's several things we need to do. We need to, yes.
Second.
Yes.
I apologize for interrupting you, but Ms. Mello, back on the line. At this point, I would entertain a motion to return to public participation and hear from Ms. Mello.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Mr. Marino to return to public participation, seconded by Mr. Labby and Mr. Knight. Any discussion on the return to public participation? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We will return to public participation. Hirsch, can you let Ms. Mello in, please?
Will do. It's coming in right now. Ms. Mello, you are now on. You can unmute. There you go.
Hello.
Good evening, Ms. Mello.
Good evening. I'm sorry, I couldn't get in through video for somehow. I don't know.
That's
Because
okay.
of
We'll
Zoom. I
have-
don't use Zoom. So, but I am the I've spoken before. I'm the occupational therapist in the school department. I'm one of many. And I just wanted to ask or speak for most of the OTs. We are still currently in school doing walk-in services, while everybody else is now home and doing remote distance learning. And I understand that we had the option to do it or not do it if we felt unsafe or so forth, but it put us in quite a predicament to say yes or no to our families, to see them or not, see their students or not. And also, I think we were told that they would hire other OTs or therapists to cover us if there wasn't anybody, but it kind of makes us feel a little bit, it was a little bit unfair, I say, but I am seeing my students for walk-in just because all my walk-ins 100% said they wanted to stay in walk-ins. It's what preempted that we stay in the school these last 2 weeks while everybody else went remote.
Did we lose Ms. Mello?
No, I was just asking the question. Are we there? Hello?
Yes.
Mr. Charbonneau, can I ask
Yeah.
Ms. Bell to please just repeat the last kind of 2 sentences you said? I think I couldn't quite hear you.
Okay, yes. So basically, the only people that are left working in schools right now are the therapists, are the OTs and the PTs. And we are offering walk-in services to students that have been walk-ins or the ones that were in person and now choosing to walk in instead of virtual. And we were just trying to figure out as OTs why we are still in person. If there is such a health issue now, and we're kind of making sure cases are high and we want to keep safe, why are we still in person?
Ms. Mello, I think that's more of a conversation that you should be having at the building level and with the superintendent. So I don't know that you're going to get an answer from this committee on that.
Oh, well, just because, I mean, we've been asking and no one will give us answers. And
Right.
I mean, as I said, we are offering it and we are doing it. We are offering it and our students aren't getting the services that they need. I think what many of us are wondering is there's many exposures that were happening in person, and we were not being told of these exposures. We were not included in many of the emails. We formed our own team telling each other when there was exposures in schools. We are the ones that were doing 3 modes of therapy. We were doing virtual, we were doing walk-in, and we were doing in-person as well. So we were commuting between schools. So again, we were pretty much with the stable pod, we were in and out of a lot of classrooms. There was contact tracing, but even with the contact tracing, we were not notified of the exposures. Right now, we have a therapist out with COVID. And she was not notified till 4 days later she had been exposed. So we have concerns that we are not being notified about exposures and so forth. And it is a concern. And now we are also offering walk-in services amongst with the students, and we're the only ones offering it these 2 weeks. So I think we're putting out there that we are not being notified. We are not being, safety-wise, we're not being offered that supervision for safety as we should be offered. And I think that we're just a little concerned that we're not getting the notifications that we need to keep safe. Because we work with students very closely, less than 3 feet apart, with kids that don't tolerate masks. So we are in close contact with these students. So we are just wanted to make sure that we are able to get more notifications and be more a part of the system that we are part of the school system as essential.
Mr. Charbonneau, may I suggest that we ask the superintendent to talk to the young lady, and we can, that's the only thing we can do at this point.
I just think the OTs wanted to have something, someone to talk to, and someone to just to because it's been throughout this time that we have been pretty much everywhere and trying our best and not getting much support. So that's why I just wanted to speak on behalf of most of the OTs, because we are offering our own chain of command here, where we're the ones like, oh, did you hear this one? There was an exposure at this school, and who was at that school? Because there's multiple of us that are at different schools in the same schools. So, but I know now we're not in person anymore, but we have gone down with exposures and quarantine and so forth. So I know we're discussing opening schools that are no in January, but I know that the last school committee meeting, there was a question about what the perspective was of special ed with our students, and the perspective of parents. And I would like to say that, I mean, working in walk-in, I speak to a lot of parents and their concerns, and I think it's getting to the frustration level of virtual and their children not being able to participate in many of the lessons due to the special needs that they have and due to the accommodations they're not getting. So I know that there was a question last time about perspective, and I feel that because I am in person, I'm getting the most of the brunt of the questions and ask of help for their students, for their children, to see what they can get for services and how to help them with being at home and being virtual. And it's sad to see how much it's affecting the students as well. Working with them one-on-one, they are very articulate about what their needs are and how difficult things for them are on a virtual basis. It's amazing how these students can tell you exactly what they are going through and what's affecting them being on a screen all day or having to sit all day. So I just wanted to answer that question. I don't know if one of the school committee members asked that question last time. And it's really, I think, if we listen to our students more and, not try to quiet them down, you get a good perspective.
I'm gonna interrupt for 1 second because, and I apologize, but it's a bad connection and I'm hearing, every third or fourth word. But I think you've made an argument. It sounded like to me that you didn't feel it was fair that you were in person. Now you're making an argument that the parents want in-person services. And to say that anyone is trying to quiet down the students, I think is unfair and inaccurate. But I'll let you finish, but I wanted to clarify for that because I'm not sure what you're looking for from this committee.
I'm just giving you my opinion of what, because I am on this side of what can you hear me correctly now? Can you hear me better
I
here?
can hear you.
Yeah, okay. When I said that they're quieting down, I didn't mean like we quiet them down. I think it's, even though they're kids, they have a good perspective on what's going on and what they need. And what my concern was, yes, we are in person, and we were asking why we were just in person, not saying why I don't want, we're in person, but we don't want to be in person. We're just asking for, yes, we're the only ones in person. Why are we not being represented for safety reasons? And also, I just wanted to give you a perspective of when I speak to parents and I speak to the students, what their perspectives are.
Okay. Thank you,
I'm
Ms.
not
Mullin.
fighting anything. I'm not fighting anything. I'm just giving you a perspective.
Okay. I appreciate you weighing in, and I thank you for your perspective. All right, at this point, Ms. Liz, has anyone else signed up for public participation?
No.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to go back to the original agenda item, school reopening plan review and possible modifications.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Marino, seconded by Mr. Labby. Any discussion on returning to? Okay, Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you. And I also want to thank Ms. Mello for sharing. It's a very difficult time. I just want to preemptively say this, that it's a very difficult time. We're all in a time that we never expected ourselves to be in. And there are a lot of stresses and challenges. So, I do understand. I would be happy to meet with her virtually at any time. But what we are doing right now is ensuring that our students who are the most needy, that can be challenged by learning virtually, are being able to have their one-to-one services. As it was mentioned, they are one-to-one services in person. So, that is something that we offered even last summer, and that's something, as we continue with distance learning, we want to make sure that our students do have that, and we did offer it as an option. So as we're moving on and we look forward to the new year and what it holds, hopefully some decreasing of numbers and the vaccine on the horizon, there's certain things that we need to do as a school department, that I need to do as the head of the school department, to get ourselves in position so that at such a time when the numbers are low, and it is safe to do so, that we can return our students. And if we were to stay in the situation we are in right now, that would be a little bit challenging because students are in 4 buildings. So it is my plan, starting tomorrow, moving into the next week, that the in-person teachers and any teachers who had been displaced from those 4 buildings start to do some synchronous and asynchronous work with their students to allow them to pack up if they have things physically in a building packed up, because I know staff like to pack up their own things, to get themselves in a situation where their stuff is packed, and then let's give everybody their holiday break. We don't expect, I don't know if facilities would have people, to be making that type of a move, but as we return in the new year, to use the next 5 to 7 days to make sure that we get the furniture and the materials back, so everybody is in position in their correct school, not necessarily physically, but their materials and their furniture in the correct school. And the teachers then can go in and start resetting up their classrooms. Anybody that knows, particularly elementary teachers, they take a lot of time over the summer. They take great care in their classrooms, and they've even done so on distance learning. If you've been into their virtual classrooms, you'll see that they have their classrooms set up behind them, whether on-site or in another setting, and they do a great job with that. And I don't want to take that away from them. So I think it's really important to give us time to get everyone back in session in their appropriate buildings. And so then what I would like to do, probably starting on January 19th, would be to bring back those students that have already been in person, that it would be the pre-K and the K, and then kind of follow along in a gradual reentry of grade levels to get all of elementary in before February vacation. And then the question would be, you know, what do we do with secondary? Do we try to, secondary is a little bit more challenging because it's really difficult with their type of schedules to keep them in stable pods. It's very different than at elementary. So we could consider a hybrid situation, which would be alternating days. That was part of our original reopening plan. Or we could keep them on distance learning. Now, with all that being said, there's certain things that, you know, after this discussion, and I'm hoping to hear some weigh in from the school committee, I would want to get a survey of our secondary staff. Do they see that a hybrid for high schoolers might be a good thing, or would they think that there's more consistency maintaining on distance learning? I also would need to look at, with staffing with our HR, the 504s, because we have an MOU that has certain staff that are unable to return during this time. So we need to be looking at that. And then additionally, we need about 3 weeks to reroute buses. So there's certain things that we just need to do to get ourselves in place. So I just wanted to open up this discussion and get some weigh in from the committee, but it would be my expectation that we do start a gradual return with our PK, even PK through 2, starting January 19th. I also know that the state did put out a calendar, a slightly different calendar, and their guidance is that they would like to see a gradual return as well, with the expectation of everyone being returned, I believe, by January 11th. So this would put us a little bit later, but I think our conditions and the time that we need for rerouting for buses and just getting ourselves prepared so that we can do this right and not have to put ourselves, you know, back in distance learning because we weren't prepared. So that's what I put out to you, and I would like to hear some feedback.
Thank you, Superintendent. At this point, I would open it up to the committee members for discussion. Bear with me as I scroll through, but if anybody has any questions, comments, any, and I want to give everybody a shot. I don't see any hands up, but Superintendent.
Mr. Chairman? Sorry.
Oh, Ms. Doobie, go ahead.
I had a finger up, not a hand. I'm sorry. So I'd first like to speak to the last part you said about surveying the teachers at the secondary level. I think that especially since when we look at our high school and middle school level, we're often looking at a hybrid return. I think it's really essential that we get weigh-in from our teaching staff, because much of what I read is that the hybrid model of teaching is extremely draining for teachers. And I don't know, maybe teachers will say, no, actually, like, I think that it would be effective. But so we're thinking about educational outcomes and effectiveness of teaching there. And they're the ones who are seeing day to day, and they would be better prepared to say, actually, I think 2 days in person would be more of a benefit, even though we might lose steam because essentially those days at home are not as effective. So like I said, I really want to hear that before we move forward with any plan with secondary. The second about kind of moving forward with returning our students, I know that we have heard from RIDE that there is going to be surveillance testing available to districts. I want to see that play out. It has been said that it is going to happen. I want to know that we have that ability in Pawtucket to do effective surveillance testing, and that we are, I would like us to see us sharing that data with our community, so that they are aware of, I mean, I don't know what of this would need motions, but I really want that to be transparent data. I know that it really bothered me that there was a 2% positivity rate in Central Falls schools. That is very troublesome. I know that it was put forward as a low number because it was compared to Central Falls positivity rate. That is not comparing the same thing. Central Falls positivity rate is a rate of people who are getting tested because they think they have COVID, because they have symptoms or because they've been exposed. The school testing is testing people who we're saying don't have COVID. That's why they're sitting in school. They're not quarantined and they have no symptoms. If 1 out of every 50 people sitting in our schools actually has COVID, I find that very troublesome. So I want to know that we have the ability to know that number. And as we are opening, that we can see that number real time. And I am in favor of the opening on the 19th because other districts are going to open a couple weeks earlier, and we can see how that testing is playing out and see how we can deploy it in our schools. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Chair, could I respond to that? I just wanted to respond and say that I did reach out to RIDE, and we are inquiring about that surveillance testing. As far as the real-time data, I agree, we would like to have that. I don't know, as far as those logistics, that's something that we would have to get from RIDE, you know, because we would be using their system, but I would hope that we'd be able to get real-time data. Thank you.
Superintendent, on the testing question, what details do we have? Who would be administering the testing? How frequently? Where?
So,
I mean,
right. My understanding and my suggestion would be that it would be very, very difficult, first of all, to do this on a daily basis, but it's something that I think could be done on a weekly basis where we set up a testing schedule. And as far as who would be doing that, I know that RIDE originally put it out there that they expected the schools to do that testing. And our correspondence with them has been that it would be our understanding that we would be getting support from the Ed Ops Center to do that testing. So that's still to be determined. If they say that they don't have the staffing to come once a week and do that testing, then it would be something we'd have to discuss, because from my unofficial knowledge of our nursing population, I'm not certain that they feel that that's something that our schools or our staff should be doing.
okay. And the January 19th date, why not a delay? If we're looking at January 19th, why not a delay until the week after February vacation? Or if why bring back the students 2 weeks or so before we would be on February vacation?
So I actually think taking the opportunity to bring back pre-K through 2, first of all, we have to remember that we also have a certain number of population that may not return. So that's another thing that we will be looking to survey parents and find out who's going to be going virtual. So that's another thing that we'll have to address very shortly. But pre-K through 2, starting them off on the 19th, allowing them, since they've already been in school anyway, they've just been in 4 buildings, allowing them to return to their own buildings. And then the following week, or you could give pre-K through 2 weeks, but either way, then adding a gradual return of 3 through 5, and actually having them in the school prior to February vacation would, to me, make a lot of sense, because then now you have a break and you can see how it is going. And then you also have that break, for the deep cleaning of the building. I know that, we keep hearing from RIDE, well, it's only a certain lower percentage on the surfaces, but we would still take that opportunity over that February break to really make sure that we had a deep cleaning of our building. So to me, it would make sense to try to get the pre-K through 5 in on a gradual basis, starting the 19th, building up to the week or so before February vacation, and then allow them to go off on to February vacation. And that would give us an opportunity to really spend that week determining how well it's working, how it's going, what changes we need to make. And that would also give our staff, some insight and data to push forward.
All right. And I would just ask of my fellow members and put it out there for discussion. Are we looking at a January 19th return, given the current state of the infection and positivity rate in the city? So all things being equal, we may look to return students beginning January 19th, where the
Mr. Chairman.
where from 15 to 22%.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Mr. Knight.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to, that I couldn't get to you earlier on this. I will say one thing. I have just been, in the last couple of days, informed that one of the people who used to work for me has passed away from COVID. He was in excellent health prior to this, other than a pre-existing condition. And I can tell you that I don't want it to happen to anybody in our system. So let's be very, very conservative with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. So we've heard from Superintendent McWilliams. Anyone have any other questions? Does anyone want to make a motion?
Chairman,
Yes.
could I just have a few things that I just wanted to ask. In regards to the buildings, I know we have the humidifiers all set up, or supposedly the electrical is supposed to be okay. Is there any way, or are we going to be able to do a trial run in each of those schools in a classroom to make sure that with the children not there, that these our electrical boards are not going to be overwhelmed and cause, hopefully, not a fire when the teacher is in there with the students while using their electrical equipment, the Elmos and things like that. Is there a way that we're able to test that or do a run through? Because I know one of the big reasons we didn't open the other schools, besides the 4 schools, was of safety in our buildings. And, you know, I just want to make sure that when the students and teachers and support staff are back in the building, that this whole thing doesn't kind of blow up. So I didn't know if there was a way, or if there had been a trial to kind of double, triple check this, just to make sure these safety protocols for those buildings are in place.
Yes, Chair, may I respond?
Please.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Kim. So yes, we have done a test run. It's that they had them up and they had them running for a couple of hours. So like I said, with our understanding, the amps that it draws is very low. These are low voltage. And also in talking with, and I know Hershey's on the line, our computer carts, which is what we were wondering about too, with kids on the computers and plugged in, the students would only be plugging those in, you know, in the after school hours. So they would go back into the carts, and those actually have a low drawing too as well. But you're correct, there are the Elmos. There's obviously lights. I know Mr. Cody's on the call. I don't know if you'd like to hear from him. I know that they did do a test run in every building of these 11 buildings. But again, there weren't teachers and students in there with their Chromebooks opened and in operating. Would you like to have a couple of comments from John?
I am going to ask Cody to weigh in. I'm going to give the members a chance to ask any other follow-up questions. We'll go to Mr. Cody. But I also had a question, Superintendent, as it relates to busing. If we Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Grant. Did you
Yeah, I'm
have more?
sorry. I had some other concerns also, but please go ahead, Chair.
No,
Uh,
Ms. Grant, please.
Thank you. I apologize. Just to piggyback also on that, and I know Mr. Cody is going to comment and talk to us, but I also just want to make sure that there are other things that people sometimes might not throw past someone that they're charging. For example, when I go to work, if my phone died, I might plug in my phone. So, I just want to make sure that if a teacher or staff or someone plugs in their phone, that also isn't going to be, I just want to make sure all the safety precautions in a classroom are taken care of. The second thing is hybrid. I actually do want to just kind of mention, I do agree with Miss Doobie. I do think when it comes to hybrid, it's very important to really speak to our teachers and our staff in regards to that. I have heard, and I've also been aware of some teachers who, they're trying to juggle it, and it's a lot. And I believe, and I could be wrong, Miss Doobie, the word she used is burnout. And I think just in general, every day, we are all burning out from this COVID or whatever we're in, pandemic right now. And our teachers have stepped up and have done a fantastic job. So I just want to make sure that they are heard. In the
I think we may have lost you, Ms. Grant. Ms. Grant?
want to make sure.
Ms. Grant, we missed, or at least I did. I missed the beginning of that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Subs. I know this week in Providence, it was a hot topic, has been a hot topic in the state. And I just want to make sure that if we do bring our students back, that we're going to be able to provide that education to them in person. I know if someone has to be quarantined or a teacher is sick, they can provide consistency on the distance learning. But it does sound like, these past few weeks with COVID getting worse, and I do believe it is going to take months really for a lot of us, maybe including some of us here, to really get this vaccine. And for it to come under control, I'm not really sure how that's going to play out. But if we don't have the staff in place, I don't think it's fair to some of the students to be going into these classrooms and just sitting there and maybe watching their phones, or maybe doing a couple assignments, and not really having any leadership in those classrooms. So I think substitutes is something we are really going to have to look at if these numbers continue to go up and we do head towards sending the students back to school.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Anyone else? Mr. Lott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just some quick thoughts. First and foremost, I want to say thank you, Miss Dr. McWilliams, for your plan. I thought it was thoughtful. It took a lot of things into consideration, including timing, in a
I
sense
can't
of.
hear you, Steve.
Can you hear me? All right, let me see if I can, a little closer. How's this now?
Better.
Better? All right, cool. Yeah, so I was just saying, Dr. McWilliams, thank you for bringing forth this plan. In terms of the timetable you presented, I do think it makes sense and it gives teachers, those who are working in person with students, the opportunities to pack up the things that they do have at a different school, get their new classrooms ready as we get the other rooms ready as well. I know Chairman raised the questions, what happens if the current rates that our community has right now still exist in January, which most likely seems like it will be the case. I struggle with that, and I wonder, I know you need time to make decisions based on busing and everything that I saw, so I wonder if when is the final day we have to make a decision in which we can have the most relevant data that gives you enough time to do everything that you need to do district-wide to make sure that our rooms and stuff are ready. In terms of the secondary level, I agree, high school, middle school is a lot harder to follow the social distance guidelines, even with the hybrid system. The thing I really struggle with is just thinking of like our seniors and juniors who, if potentially if things don't get better, would have about a year and a half of not having any type of in-person learning or opportunities to connect with teachers or guidance counselors one-on-one in person. And I know a lot of things can be done critically virtually, but I do think if there's anything we could do, hopefully as things get better and we're more prepared with our buildings, that we do seriously consider some type of hybrid or some other method to get some of our students in there physically sometimes.
So Chair, may I respond?
Please.
Okay, so and it would be a response to both Mrs. Grant and Mr. Lobby. As far as the hybrid, yes, we would definitely survey the staff, and we would want to make sure that the secondary, particularly 9 through 12, would weigh in on whether that would be the best situation, or is it more consistent for them to stay on distance learning. Regarding the time that Mr. Lobby, that you brought up, so it is my plan starting tomorrow that teachers would, who are displaced, what we call displaced, not in their home school, would get themselves prepared starting tomorrow by doing synchronous and asynchronous work over the next week, so that they can enjoy their holiday and then come back in the beginning of January and prepare their classrooms. Whether or not there's a date, an official date to go back, that's, that we would like to have at least 3 weeks, because busing is indicated to us that they need 3 weeks to reroute busing. So 3 weeks is what we need. But as far as if everybody went back to their normal school that they belong in, and we still stayed in distance learning, we haven't lost anything. We've just put ourselves in position to receive in person should the time be right. So that's my plan starting tomorrow, would be to let teachers know you can do synchronous and asynchronous work, get yourself boxed up if you want to, and well, not if you want to, but you need to, and kind of move forward with that. As far as an actual date of, PK is going to come back on this date or that date, busing, the first student has indicated to us that they do need 3 weeks to reroute. So if you keep the 3 weeks in mind, that would give us a better time frame. Hopefully I answered.
Mr. Marino.
Thank you, Chairman. I just had a brief question. I think that K through 12 teachers and staff are in the second phase of the health officials vaccination distribution plan, and I'm just curious if the district has received any guidance for any official rollout, or is it still too early?
So Chair, I'd like to respond to that. So yes, it is, we have not received any official guidance as of yet. And I would assume it would be a little bit, too early, but obviously we're anxious to get it as soon as we can.
Adam, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Bonolo.
I have a couple of questions and probably, if not the superintendent, Mr. Cody can answer them. But the air filters, do they actually have physical filters? I know my daughter's has one that you have to wipe out. And do we have replacement filters for them? And who's going to be doing that work?
I can answer that question for you.
Mr. Cody, please.
Yes, these filters are good for 3,000 hours. The problem with this is once these filters are done, to get 500 more would cost us $69,000. Because these are very good META 5 purifiers. But I figured out if we run them 9 hours a day, which is an hour before they get in, about an hour after, these filters could last probably about a year and a half. That's if we monitor them. These purifiers also come with timers. They come with children locks. So we would instruct the custodians, turn them on in the morning, turn them on an hour after the students have left. And maybe we can get a year out of this, a year and a half out of this. And then hopefully when that time does come, then we won't be worried about this so much because of the vaccine.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is, if our students are going back into school, whether they're hybrid or full-time, whatever they are, it's going to require a lot more cleaning. Tolman has bathrooms on 3 floors, so does Shea. And that's a lot of work to be in there on a regular basis, on a frequent basis. Are we going to have the staffing to do this, or are we going to have to look into putting someone else on the staff to do it?
Right now, we're in good shape, but we're like anybody else. We're like the teachers. We're at the mercy of whether or not somebody catches it and quarantining people. And 2 different occasions, I've lost half of my crews in 2 different buildings, which luckily we had other people who were willing to volunteer. As far as places like Tolman, Shea, whatever they are, every hour on the hour, when a bathroom gets done, there's a checklist on the door, like if you walk into a Target or a Walmart, that says what was done in the room and who was there last. We have sprayers that they use for the bigger schools that they can go on their backs so that they can go from one floor to another, just spraying the bathrooms and disinfecting them also. As far as the coverage, we would probably at that point discuss with night people, probably on a rotating basis. At the high schools, we have 2 people on during the day, maybe bring in a third like we have been in our 4 schools that are currently open, so that we have a rotation of people constantly just moving around, cleaning doorknobs every hour on the hour and flat surfaces. It's worked out in the 4 schools we've had so far. It was an adjustment at first because we had never gone through this. But luckily, the people who are in these buildings now, they'll be going back to their home buildings, and they've been going through this for the past 4 months.
Okay, that's great. And the last question, Superintendent, masks. Now, I know from bringing Melody to preschool, there are students that go into the playground area without their masks on a regular basis, and they just don't wear them, and the teachers allow them in their classrooms without a mask on. I know these are preschoolers, but this is also spread. And what are we going to do about that when we have everybody back?
Mm-hmm. So, Chair, may I respond to that? So obviously masks are mandatory, and that came forward through the state, that went forward in our correspondence with all our administrators. With that being said, though, we are very cautious and very conscientious to not be punitive against, small children who may be struggling with it, particularly the ones, preschool is really tough, and also our special needs, as you heard from the public participation, it's really difficult. So that's really going to come with that one-on-one conversations, counseling, social workers getting involved, you know, helping them to understand the importance of their own safety and then also the safety of others. So it's a little bit more than, you know, just giving a directive. It's really about building that positive rapport with the student. And I'm not going to, you know, say that it hasn't been, because I know preschool has been a challenge for some of the children. It has been, and I know that the teachers are doing what they can. I've actually been in some of the classrooms, and I've seen, you know, seen them communicate with the children and get down, you know, keep their distance, but get down their level and try to explain to them how important it is. And so we'll continue to do that, but we wouldn't take a punitive, you know, approach. And we also communicate and work with the family. And that's where the social workers come in too, to, you know, assist the families with that communication and encourage them to have those conversations with their children after school hours.
And do we have enough masks for people?
I believe so. John, I believe we have plenty.
Right now, we have enough masks, cloth masks, to go around to every student in the district one time. We have enough for the teachers and staff, and I have at least 15,000 disposable. And all of the schools that weren't in session, they've already received the second round of PPE. It's been locked up in the isolation rooms, ready to go. And Chris Silver is re-inventorying what he has and what he gave out, and he's going to be reordering more.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mr. Knight. Ms. Pinola, good? Oh, all right. Mr. Knight, you're up.
John, I just have one question. The superintendent did, or yourself, I'm not sure who, did mention that we only ran these machines for 30 or 3 hours or so. Well, if we're asking them to be running for 9 hours when the students are there, shouldn't they be run by 9 hours until then? A couple of days until that time?
Right now, the amount of time. Right now, the amount of time isn't the problem. It's the amperage in which it will take in, which these are only probably taking about 3/4 of an amp each. My initial issue with, if we go back to the second round of walkthroughs through the state, the superintendent and myself asked all the principals to make themselves available for these walkthroughs so that they could also tell about issues that they've had in the buildings, meaning we can't plug this or this in, and then we trip breakers, just so that they could hear it coming from the principal, because a lot of times we don't get a complaint about that. They kind of take care of it in-house. At that time, that's when the state requested us to get what was considered electrical capacity check on all our buildings. It's merely an electrician or an engineer to go around and check all our panels, which was done. When doing that, they said 10.7 amps per room, based on everything that the teachers usually use. This was including the carts, the Elmos, and everything. It would be 10.7 amps on a 15 amp breaker. The difference is, when we initially looked at it, the Chromebook carts said they took 12. And when they ran a test on it with a voltage meter, they found out that fully loaded, they were only exhausting 6 amps. So if you take 6 amps off, say, like Slater Junior High School at 38 carts, that now deducts 228 amps. Do I believe that we still won't have problems tripping in certain places? Because they did identify heaters here have to be unplugged. Coffee pots here or microwaves have to be unplugged. They said simply, you are going to have to identify what causes that problem if it does happen, and you're going to have to remove whatever device which caused it. But the device cannot be the purifiers. So as of right now, for me to run full out, I really can't do that until the teachers get in. But according to their engineers, they believe that we're within the limits. They only had problems with the annex. They thought that one of the breakers had issues when it would come to the air conditioning on one side, which we have had in the past. They believe the light load was also connected to that breaker. But other than that, they believe that because that these purifiers only take about 3/4 of an amp, that we should be fine.
Well, that's fine for them to believe it, but let's test it out and see if they're right.
Well, it's kind of hard for me to test out all computer carts when all the computers and all the Chromebooks aren't, they're all with the children right now. So
I'm not
that's your big draw.
Purifiers.
The purifier,
Let's run the purifiers in each building for 9 hours with somebody paying attention and see what happens. It
the draw
just
still
makes
won't,
common
the
sense.
draw still won't be more than 3/4 of an amp. I can do that.
Let's see what happens.
I can do it for 9 hours in every building. That's not a problem, and I can tell you what happens.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Doobie?
I just want to speak to a few questions that I have. First, in response to your question, Mr. Chairman, I am not comfortable saying that right now, if the infection rates were where they are now after MLK, that I would be comfortable sending back my children or anything beyond our very protected group that we prioritized, mostly because the reason that we have chosen those 4 groups to send back is because we look at this through an equity lens, and we're putting all of our resources to trying to ensure that we have enough substitutes for that 25% of our student body. And if we're going to grow that number, during this time when we know that community spread is rampant enough that we are seeing at all schools that are open just a real difficult time staying open consistently and with teachers in the classroom, I would not be comfortable. I am not comfortable voting right now, and maybe the rest of the committee is, or maybe enough of the committee is, to say a definite date that I want to share with anything beyond our 4 prioritized groups, to say that we would definitely be bringing them back, because we have already been told by Dr. Fauci that January is going to be the darkest month of this virus. And I don't see the middle of January being I'm saying like that, that's definitely when we're going to start bringing back more kids. I'd like to point out that the attendance dashboard, which is public knowledge, so everyone can go look at it. We have elementary schools, not in Pawtucket, but if you look at that, usually secondary schools are near the bottom. There are 10 elementary schools all at the bottom of that attendance dashboard. They are all fully open. They're in Woonsocket and they're in Providence. These are elementary schools that are fully open, and it's really troublesome to see elementary schools with almost 50% absenteeism. And I don't want to move from where we are now, where I think we are seeing, I'm not saying we can be bragging about our attendance, but we're essentially more consistent with where other schools are. And I know that it has been spoken of many times about mental and emotional stress of distance learning on children and on families. But all of these ideas and studies, no one is comparing actual research and studies of mental and emotional stress for students who are in the classroom right now during these conditions and students who are on distance learning. So I would rather look to real data on consistency being one of the most important things for children to have. And I do not want us am I correct that we will have to change students' schedules and teachers' schedules in order to do this, because not all children will decide to return in person, and not all teachers will end up returning in person. Some will end up in the virtual academy with dedicated teachers. They will continue in the distance learning that they have been doing with regular Google Meets. And so I'm asking a question for clarification here, but if a parent decides to preference distance learning, they may get a new teacher, but they will continue to have a consistent day-to-day remote learning experience. And the children in the classroom may go in with different teachers. So we're already gonna kind of mess with that consistency, but we better be sure that we're opening at a time when we can say, but we'll pretty much be able to like have a decently consistent learning environment as we did in September and October when the infection rates were much lower as opposed to what we're seeing now. So I guess
so Chair, could I respond?
Dedicated teachers for remote,
yeah,
and how many schedules are going to have to be redone. So we're already going to see a disruption before the students even return.
So Chair, could I respond to that?
Please.
Okay, so no, I understand, Erin, the concern and wanting to be comfortable to make sure that we're safe. And so obviously this whole conversation is really prioritized based on COVID conditions. So, you know, we're looking at where we're at today, and if the darkest days is January 19th, then, you know, that kind of puts everything. I wouldn't want to see our children coming back when it's increasing and worse. What I'm saying is, number one, getting ourselves into position. But number two, I agree with you with the attendance. Again, our attendance isn't perfect, but we are consistently consistent with both in-person and distance learning attendance. So Hirsch and I were able to do a little bit of work there to try to figure out where our attendance sat, and we're not seeing it worse in distance learning. We're not seeing it worse in person. It's pretty consistent. So with that being said, that we only have those 4 groups that are in person. As far as schedules, yes, the schedules so right now we have those 4 groups in person, and it would affect schedules because we have a group of students that are currently kindergartners that are virtual. So we have 8 virtual kindergarten classrooms. We would need to be, again, that would be a survey going out to those parents. Are they going to continue? Are they expecting to continue in virtual? Because if that's the case, some of those students have their original teacher, but some don't. So it would affect some number of students that would have to shift, because if in-person goes with the teacher back to the classroom, we would have to work out a new virtual. And then again, I agree with you with the social emotional. There isn't really a lot to say, although people say that it affects students social emotionally, but there isn't any really research and data behind it. One of the things I want the committee to consider is that we are required, and the state has not lifted assessment. So we need to have our multilingual learners, which is about, I want to say maybe 1,400 of them, that are going to need to take the WIDA access testing, which normally runs January 2nd-ish through January 23rd. RIDE has extended that date to March 12th. So regardless of our return or not return, we would still need to bring those students at some point in by appointment or whatever, so that they would take that access testing, kind of like what we did the PSATs and the SATs and the CTE exams, which are required exams. The other thing to keep in mind is the state has also not lifted the RICAS assessments. So those are expected to start in March, and they usually run till right after April vacation. So, you know, we have to keep those things in mind. We want to make sure that our students are not at a disadvantage as far as testing. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we talk about the 4 groups. The 4 groups bring pre-K, K, special populations, which includes our specialized classrooms and the multilingual learners. When we talk about a return, we're talking first, in my professional opinion, to return the pre-K and K. Or we could extend that to pre-K, K1, or we could extend to pre-K through 2. Either way, the pre-K and K that have already been in person, when they would be the first ones that we would want to return, because they've already been used to going to school, been a part of it. They would just be physically changing their location. The specialized classrooms, that should not be an issue either. To number one, if the parents want them to continue virtually, they would still have their in-person therapies, which would be by appointment, you know, 1-to-1. Or if they return in the classroom, they're in a specialized classroom, so they would be returning with their teachers. So that their schedules wouldn't be affected. However, the schedules of the multilingual learners would be affected, because multilingual learners were pretty much spread out to the 4 buildings, and they were a conglomerate of all of our, you know, by grade level, of all of our schools. So those would need to be teased out, and my recommendation would be that we look really closely and make sure that they, like, if you're a pre-K multilingual learner, you're coming in with your pre-K. If you're a K, you're coming in with a K. So they would be a gradual entrance alongside their grade level. It would be really difficult for us to say, let's bring back all those multilinguals, because they're all in different, you know, there might be one teacher that has like 5 multilinguals in one school and 3 multilinguals in another school. We kind of brought those children together and put them in those 4 buildings. So I hope that helps you understand how we would have to roll out the different groups that we have.
All right. Anything else on this,
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions.
Ms. Grant?
I have a question for the superintendent. Earlier in this conversation, Mrs. Bonolo mentioned the playgrounds. Our playgrounds are not being used at each individual school at this time, are they?
No, the playgrounds haven't been being used, but for pre-K, so our pre-K students, they're under, you know, a lot of the guidance of the state. And so pre-K have to have a playground or an outside, it's required time in their schedules. I would have to get more specifics though, because I know Mrs. Bonolo did refer to before school. I think maybe you could give me, Mrs. Bonolo, more specific, and then I can look into that. I know it's, our pre-K has been being housed mostly at Barrier and then 2 pre-Ks at Green.
Right. I know when I had visited Varia, the setup they had outside in the recess yard, you know, for the children playing, I thought was fabulous. But to actually use an actual climb on, you know, because my follow-up question would be, how are we keeping that clean?
Right.
So, you know, that was my first question. My second question is the therapists, the OTs, PTs. When these children come in, what are the required, or what are we asking for safety reasons for our therapists to wear to help protect themselves? Are we just asking them to wear a mask, or are we asking them to wear a gown, maybe a shield over a mask? What is the exact, you know, what are we asking of them?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to respond to that. So yes, the protocol was sent out by special ed right at the beginning, actually when we started this last summer for the in-person, and that does include full PPE. We have the gowns, we have the shields, we have the masks, and it would be the expectation. When I've been in the schools, I see, you know, the therapists using that. When the therapists come in by appointment, it's done by appointment. And there's a whole, that the parent and the child, there's a protocol that special ed has for contact tracing reasons, where they have to sign in, and they have, you know, they have a very good system. I would have to get, I could certainly email you the complete information if you would prefer. I could email that to the committee. I don't have it off the top of my head.
I'm just wondering, because I know personally, a lot of times the children of special needs are kind of in your face and things like that. And I would hope that our therapists, which are protected. And I would just think that one of the best ways to protect yourself would be to have a mask, then a shield above it. A shield for eyes and any saliva that might, you know, and then the mask also underneath to kind of cover the underneath. So I do want to make sure that, you know, that is both of those are being provided to them, and that's something that they are using, because, you know, we have discussed safety. I'll be honest with you. I am a big person. I do believe in the one-on-one services in the kids coming in. I believe that it is safe. I take my own child to one-on-one services, but I do believe that the person providing it does need to be safe in regards to having that protective. So I just want to make sure that they are preparing themselves and making sure that they are wearing those items.
I will definitely follow up on that and make sure that they are. I appreciate you bringing that to my forefront. I also want to comment on the pre-K. So the pre-K, they're using the blacktop. They're required to have that outdoor time, which is what I believe you saw, the blacktop area. But the playground is off limits for, for the reasons that you mentioned. But also at Varia, I believe that playground is city-owned. And of course, we tell parents that they shouldn't be on that playground. But if it's before and after school, it's a little bit challenging to maintain that. I think that might be what Mrs. Nola was referring to.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I just wanted, because I know some of our other schools like Potter's, isn't that something the PTA is not owned, that the PTA had raised those funds
Well,
at Potter's?
I think we're getting a little bit more off topic of, so I just want to reel it back in and
Thank you.
there is not a decision to be made here tonight. Is that accurate, or is someone looking to put forth a motion? Are we looking to take this item up again on our January meeting? Or are we looking to say, let's make a motion that we return pre-K, grades 1 and 2 in a phased-in approach beginning January 19th, and phase the other grade levels in, at least on the elementary level? Or do the committee members want to give this another couple of weeks and see how it plays out? A couple of thoughts that I'd like to share was, one, we made this original decision based in part because of the air filtration. So the fact that we got the air purifiers and the state delivered, what they said they would. Last week when we picked them up, 500 air purifiers, and we thanked them for that. But we also had, to Ms. Grant's point, an electricity concern. We also had a social distancing concern, where we're going to put 20 to 25 students back in a classroom. And you've all seen the pictures as well as I have, where they're going to be sitting 19 inches apart from each other with a mask on. I've yet to see any data that says that that's okay, even in, with air purifiers, sitting there, in essence all day long with their mask on. And from an educational delivery standpoint, I think we got it right. And I think we delivered a consistent educational platform from when we sent the students back right up until now. So when we talk about a return to in-person learning, the stories I'm hearing about in-person learning are, there are a lot of uncovered classrooms. There are, there's windows open, there's bus rides with windows open. It's not an environment either on the way to school or in the physical classroom that's necessarily conducive to learning. I recognize that I may be in the minority on this committee about it, but there were other concerns other than just air filtration that we decided to go to distance learning. So I see the need, and I certainly want my kids back in school too. But if we're going to put elementary students on a bus in January with windows open to go to a classroom that's going to have a window or two or several open to sit 19 inches from their classmates, I don't know from an educational delivery standpoint that we're doing the best thing for those students. And I want to make sure that we're not, all the good work we did delivering education isn't lost in a rush just to push kids back into a classroom.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Knight.
Mr. Chairman, if I will put a motion forward that we go with the superintendent's recommendation to plan for the 19th of January. However, reminding everyone that we have a meeting January 11th and we can call the whole thing off.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Knight that we accept the superintendent's recommendation for a phased-in return for elementary students beginning January 19th. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Bonolo has seconded the motion. Discussion on the return, the partial phased-in return of elementary beginning January 19th. I think we just had a pretty extensive conversation on that. Anything else on that?
Yes, there
Mr. Chair.
is.
Yes.
I also want,
I agree with you. And I agree with what Ms. Stube had said earlier. I believe it is too soon to make any of these decisions. And I would like to see maybe us table this and come back to this. But again, that's just my opinion.
So,
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
When I said that the one thing that Dr. McWilliams said that I definitely would like to vote on tonight that I do think is important is I do think we should use the next few weeks, the break, so like the next few days, and then the days after break to reposition our students. I do see value in doing that now, regardless of what happens afterwards. And I also see value in getting a better pulse on how many of our students actually are interested in coming back, and also where our staff is, because I think that that is very helpful information. If we find out that 45% of our families are saying that they're not going to send their kids back either way, then that's really important information for us to know as we consider this. So I know we already have a motion on the table, but that's where my motion would be. My motion would be to, like I said, that's how I would make my motion.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah. One comment, please.
Mr. Knight first and Ms. Bonolo.
Mr. Chairman, my motion included the fact that this would be on the January meeting so we could put a pause to it again if we needed to. This just allows the superintendent to plan.
Understood.
That's all I see.
Understood. Ms. Bonolo?
Okay, I believe the superintendent talked about the phase-in starting with the students who were already in school, being in their own home schools, and starting from there and then going from there. So that's a limited number of students who will be going back. And depending on how things are at that point is to add someone back in. So right now, it's pre-K, K, and special populations. And I think, if you start with that and then slowly filter more in as the virus subsides, I think that's gonna, that was my understanding of how it was going to work and what she was saying. So I may have misunderstood, but that's what I thought.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. I think that's what Mr. Knight's motion reflects, that we accept the superintendent's recommendation. And with the caveat that we have a meeting and we will put this item on that agenda for January 11th, if the date escapes me, but if I believe that's the date. And we can certainly choose a different path on January 11th. I think we've spent enough time back and forth in discussion on this. Unless anyone has any other thoughts relative to Mr. Knight's motion, I want to at least call the roll on that motion, being that it's been made and it's been seconded. Is there any other discussion?
No, but Mr. Charbonneau, can we have Ms. Liss read back the exact motion that we're voting on? Please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Liss, if you... Go ahead, Ms. Liss.
Mr. Knight moved to go with the superintendent's recommendation for a phased-in plan starting January 19th for pre-K, K, and grades 1 and 2, and to put on the January 11th meeting agenda to be reconsidered if necessary.
All right. So that is the motion on the floor. Ms. Doobie, do you need clarification or do you have any comments additionally?
No, I'm not comfortable voting on that as it's currently stated. Like I said, I would be much more comfortable. I would vote on a motion to reposition our students with the intent to bring back our special populations on January 19th and evaluate on January 11th whether we can bring back more than that on January 19th. That's where I am right now. I will be voting no on that motion as it stands because that doesn't reflect where I am.
Okay. Anyone else have anything on the motion by Mr. Knight? Roll call on the motion, please.
Ms. Vinolo,
Yes.
Ms. Doobie,
No.
Ms. Grant,
No.
Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Knight,
Mr. Knight,
Yes. Yes.
thank you. Mr. Marby,
He said
Mr. Larby, thank you. Mr. Marino,
No.
Mr. Charbonneau,
no. Motion fails 4-3.
yes.
All right.
Mr.
Ms.
Charbonneau,
Doobie, did you have a motion?
I do. I move that we instruct the superintendent to reposition our students as she laid out over the next few weeks as we are, as the students are not in the building, and that we plan to return our PK, K, and special needs, special population on January 19th, and put on the agenda for January 11th a discussion of adding more students or a phased reopening.
Motion made by Ms. Doobie, seconded by Mr. Marino. Any discussion on the motion by Ms. Doobie? There being no discussion. Anyone have anything on the motion by Ms. Doobie? Roll call on the motion, please.
Ms. Dinolo,
Yes.
Ms. Doobie,
Yes.
Ms. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Larby, Mr. Marino,
Yes.
Mr. Charbonneau.
Yes. All right, moving along. Repeal school policy, second vote, AC, non-discrimination, unlawful harassment, and sexual harassment policy procedures.
Motion to approve?
Motion to repeal by Ms. Bonolo, seconded by Mr. Larby. Any discussion on the repeal of school committee policy, second passage, policy AC? There being no discussion, roll call on the repeal, please.
Ms. Bonolo,
Yes.
Ms. Doobie,
Yes.
Ms. Grant, Ms. Grant,
I think Ms. Grant's away from her computer right now.
okay. Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Larby,
Yes.
Mr. Marino,
Yes.
Mr. Charbonneau.
Yes. Okay, school committee policy, second passage. UNDB, computer network and internet acceptable use policy.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion to approve school committee policy, second passage, UNDB, computer network and internet accessible use policy by Ms. Bonolo, seconded by Mr. Marino. Any discussion on UNDB?
Just to clarify for the minutes, it's IJNDB.
IJNDB.
It looks like a U, but it's an IJ.
Got it. IJNDB. Any discussion? Roll call on the second passage approval?
Ms. Bonolo,
Yes.
Ms. Doobie,
Yes.
Ms. Grant. Ms. Grant? Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Larby,
Yes.
Mr. Marino,
Yes.
Mr. Charbonneau.
Yes. Now, 18, non-discrimination, unlawful harassment, sexual harassment policy and procedures.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second?
Motion to approve school committee second passage policy AC, non-discrimination, unlawful harassment and sexual harassment policy and procedures by Mr. Lobby, seconded by Mr. Marino and Ms. Bonolo. Any discussion on AC? Roll call on the approval, please.
Ms. Bonolo,
Yes.
Ms. Doobie,
Yes.
Ms. Grant, Mr. Knight.
I'm sorry, I
Yes.
just got back.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Ms. Grant, we
Mr.
approval of non-discrimination, unlawful harassment and sexual harassment policy and procedures. Approval for the second passage.
Yes.
thank you. Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Larby,
Yes.
Mr. Marino,
Yes.
Mr. Charbonneau.
Yes. Second passage approval, ECD air quality.
Motion to
Approve.
approve?
Second?
Motion to approve second passage ECD air quality by Ms. Bonolo, seconded by Mr. Lobby and Mr. Marino. Any discussion on air quality policy? Roll call on the approval, please.
Ms. Bonolo,
Yes.
Ms. Doobie,
Yes.
Ms. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Larby,
Yes.
Mr. Marino,
Yes.
Mr. Charbonneau.
Yes. All right, and F, Energy Star equipment and appliances, second passage.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Motion to approve ECF, Energy Star equipment and appliances by Mr. Lobby, seconded by Ms. Bonolo. Any discussion on ECF? Roll call on the second passage approval, please.
Ms. Bonolo,
Yes.
Ms. Doobie,
Yes.
Ms. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Larby,
Yes.
Mr. Marino,
Yes.
Mr. Charbonneau.
Yes. All right, new business, approval to reallocate $500 community service corp stipend to the anime club for the 2020-2021 school year at Shea High School.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve the reallocation of $500 to the anime club at Shea High School for the school year 2020-2021 by Ms. Doobie, seconded by Mr. Marino. Any discussion on this? Ms. Bonolo?
Ms. Devine, can you tell us why it's being reallocated?
Sure. This is at the request of the Shea principal to actually reallocate from a club that is not currently existing. And so it's for the same exact stipend. So it's moving $500. And just so for those of you who don't have the background, the purpose of this club is to provide a positive environment for students to connect with each other through the medium of anime, and students will view and/or read anime and discuss all aspects of the Japanese anime art form in a book club style format. The topics such as theme, characters, and artwork animation will be discussed, including influence on the anime art form on other cultures. Other activities such as games, drawing, painting, and other anime-related crafts may also be included. And that's an equal swap of 500 from the Community Service Club to this stipend.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. Anything else on this item? The motion on the floor to approve the $500, seconded. No further discussion. Roll call on the approval, please.
Ms. Bonolo,
Yes?
Ms. Doobie,
Yes.
Ms. Grant, Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Larby,
Yes.
Mr. Marino,
Yes.
Mr. Charbonneau.
Yes. All right. Approval of rental of a diesel generator, fuel, and heaters for Kervin Elementary School.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the rental of a diesel generator with fuel and heaters for Kervin Elementary School by Mr. Knight and Ms. Bonolo, seconded by Mr. Marino. Discussion on this? John, I would just have comment, not seeing that there's anyone else for discussion, is to the extent possible, John, can we keep this within utilizing, vendors within Pawtucket as far as for fuel and/or rental of the generator and heaters, and reinvest back into the city economy?
Well, the fuel itself does come from a local fuel company. The generators itself, the only ones that we could get a handle on were out of Sunbelt, who are through the MPA. But there was nobody who could provide the generators and the actual heaters that we were looking for at the time. This, if you remember, a year ago, we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the reason why we're here is because a year ago, we were also planning on doing all the rooftop units at Kervin over in the summer of 2020. But unfortunately, once we were ready to put our orders in, we were ready to get going, it's usually a 3 to 4 month lead time on you made it. Now that if we ordered them in, say, April, now they were saying we might not see them until September or October. At that time, obviously, we didn't know where we would be school-wise, or we would have had them put at this time. During this time, I'll just let you know, we're also planning on replacing the roof at the same time, and we're also going to do health and safety upgrades, but we're also doing it all through one architect rather than doing them separately, which will also save us money.
All right, thank you. Anything else on the approval of the rental?
Mr. Charbonneau, can I just ask Mr. Cody to clarify? Did you say that this is happening this summer coming up?
Yeah, we're going to replace all the rooftop units, the roof itself, and health and safety upgrades inside the building.
For Kervin?
So Kervin's going to have a big summer.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else on the approval? Roll call, please.
Ms. Bonolo,
Yes?
Ms. Doobie,
Yes.
Ms. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Larby,
Yes.
Mr. Marino,
Yes.
Mr. Charbonneau.
Yes. All right, Pawtucket Annex and use. Excuse me. I was asked by a few different committee members to begin this conversation as it relates to the end use for the annex, whether that be 10 years down the road or 15 years down the road, when we're done using it as a swing space during our district-wide reinvention, as it were, or construction, certainly. Ms. Doobie? Oh, okay. So I know there was discussion on this a couple of meetings back, and so I thought to open up the broader discussion to the committee, and that's why the item is on the agenda. I have heard thoughts that ranging, really from everything. I think where I am positioned on this and where I have been since we purchased the annex was that at some point we as a district need to consider it and look seriously at providing a special ed school that's state of the art, that has the proper equipment and the proper footprint to service some of our most vulnerable students. I think the annex represents a unique circumstance in that the campus layout of it and the fact that we will be investing millions of dollars into it puts us at kind of a crossroads where making a long-term decision on the end use of that facilitates the construction that's going to occur now, so that we're not undoing work we've done, or we're not adding things that may not be suitable for its end use. I think this committee has done a remarkable job at being fiscally responsible when it comes to school construction and renovations. I envision that the annex in its end use becomes, like I said, a state-of-the-art special needs campus where we are able to bring back all of our students into in-district, in-person learning in a campus-like environment that provides not only the state-of-the-art equipment and services, but also at the end of the day is located within the city limits that these students live in. I think we spend in excess of $7 million a year in out-of-district tuition. I think if we look at this from a business perspective, that tuition bill is never going to go down year over year in out-of-state tuition. If it's 7 million now, in 5 years, 10 years, who knows what that number is. But beyond the business rationale for establishing this campus, we talk about an equity lens. And we are doing major renovations and building new schools all over this city. And we cannot forget our most vulnerable population as we widen this build out. I think it makes all the sense in the world. I think this committee has shown that it is capable of taking on big projects and delivering significant results that benefit all students. My vision of what the annex campus becomes is just that, is that it becomes a state-of-the-art special needs campus that not only houses Pawtucket students, and perhaps we look at some point to offer that to students outside of our district. But I think it's high time that we, as a district, started to invest in our special needs population. And so that's how I see it. I wanted to open the conversation up. I've heard from a number of you as to potential end uses, and I would open it up for anyone who has a comment or question. I think at this point, if we look at an end use, then that positions Collier and potentially Antonozzi and Toronto, who are the architects of record for the swing space renovation, to perhaps widen their scale of work. And certainly there would be SBA approvals and RIDE considerations that we would have to obtain. But I think we're at a time where, again, we want to make sure our investments aren't things that we will undo 4 years from now.
Motion to make that suggested motion.
Second.
I'm sorry, Mr. Knight?
I will make the motion that you're suggesting.
It's second.
There's a motion on the floor that the end use of the Pawtucket Annex becomes a state-of-the-art special needs by Mr. Knight. It's been seconded by Ms. Grant. Discussion on that.
Mr. Chair.
And
First,
Ms. Hello.
okay. My voice might crack a little.
Ms. Grant, it's cracking on my end just from the phone connection. So if I ask you to repeat yourself, I apologize, but I'm getting a lot of interference.
We're not hearing you, Ms. Grant.
Oh,
At all.
lost her altogether.
Brent?
Ms.
Oh.
Finola, you go
Okay.
with your thought, and then we'll come back to Ms. Grant when she's got a better connection.
Okay. Sorry.
Is it going to be something like Northern Rhode Island Collaborative? Because I think at some point in time, regulation required that we integrate, and that the special needs population wasn't set aside, that they were part of the main community. Now, if that was changed, that's fine. But unless it's something like a Rhode Island, Northern Rhode Island Collaborative, I'm not sure how that works, but there are other people on here that have that knowledge, if they could enlighten me.
Are you referring to Attorney Connolly, Superintendent McWilliams, or? I believe.
Maybe the superintendent would know.
Yeah, Chair, I can respond, and then certainly the attorney could weigh in. So the law hasn't changed. You actually want to put students in the least restrictive environment, and that's what the law states, that students should be included in the least restrictive environment. And many of our IEP students are in that least restrictive environment, included in a classroom. Many years ago, it was called inclusion, right? It was called an inclusion classroom. And so we have students at all levels and all grade levels, and you wouldn't even know that they had an individual education plan unless you saw them leave the classroom to go get their particular therapy service or in-person service or something like that. So you're correct, the law does state that. I think it's my understanding that you're referring more to what we have for outplacement students. So outplacement students would be those students that can't be serviced in the particular environment, such as, I think you brought up the Northern Rhode Island Collaborative, which is specific to specific significant needs, or like a meeting street or things like that. I know this, when you talk about an end use, it's always good to think about down the road, because if the thought isn't there, you can't really pursue anything. You can't ask any questions, so it's my understanding that, maybe some questions need to be asked, what is possible? It is a beautiful campus that could be used for, we have the meeting street is a beautiful building. It's a great place. It services a lot of students. So I think you have to think of all the different options. And I believe the chair stated that it is something to consider when you're talking about moving forward with construction on that site, because whatever you do, you don't want to spend millions to then tear it down for a different use. So it's good to have some ideas. But with that being said, yes, Mrs. Manola, you're correct. We are inclusive, least restrictive environment, unless you're talking about a specific type of school, like a Northern Rhode Island Collaborative or a Sergeant Center or a meeting street. And that would be something that we would have to investigate as to what's allowable from RIDE, and even what kind of a cost those types of structures, both physical structures and putting together those programs would cost. I don't know if Attorney Connolly has any experience or could weigh in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
So that's a pretty correct summary of what the status of the law is and what it has been. The students do need to be in the least restrictive environment. But as we all know, there are very specialized facilities to service really high need students. So as the concept is developed, it's important to keep in mind that while all those students need to be in that least restrictive environment, those students who, for instance, may use that as a centralized campus will still have the ability to integrate with the rest of the district and all the various social, recreational, and other activities that they can. So it obviously it's the discussion's in the very incipient stages, but as it's developed, we need to keep in mind that we have to meet that legal standard, and perhaps at the same time understand that by creating that that kind of a campus, we may actually create additional opportunities to integrate those students within our own community.
And Ms. Bonolo, I think you bring up a great point, and I should have mentioned this in my earlier comments. This is the agenda item was placed on there to have the discussion and to get a consensus of this committee as a way to move forward. Now, as we start the vetting process and going through, you know, we may find out that we can't do it, or that, you know, whatever the case may be. But I think it was important. The sense I was getting from the committee was that there was 5 or 6 different ideas of what the end use may be. So to put the item on, have a motion made with what the hopefully will be, I think gives us a starting point. And as we start to go down that road, we may or may not see this come to fruition, but at least we're all on the same page for what that campus will eventually be used.
Mr. Chair, if you're ready, I can. First of all, this is very close to my heart. So first of all, I want to thank you for bringing this to the forefront. There are a couple of things I want to say. You know, when I first got on the committee and we would tour the schools, it was so disheartening to see the speech teacher in the closet or the therapist having to be in the hallway. You know, not that I want to say that they were always the last ones to be thought of, but I think, you know, these children, especially as they get bigger, the bathrooms, you know, I realize our school district is very old, but these children deserve bathrooms that are
Ms. Grant, we lost you again. Ms. Grant?
I don't know if you, so with that being said, Pawtucket, when my daughter started school in the district, was known for their Together We Grow program. Unfortunately, I know it's kind of shrunk a little bit due to the fact that preschools are all day now and that program is still half day. But, you know, there are ways we can get around this. We can offer, we can do a list and see if there are typical children or families who want to apply. We could even maybe someday be like JMW, go out of the city and see if there's students who want to pay a tuition. But I do think there is a need in this district for that. A lot of these children have to go out of district because these buildings are just not meant for them. They're small hallways, small bathrooms. They need a place to, you know, maybe, you know, take a breath. They need a quiet place. And we've all been in the buildings. There aren't many extra places for these children to go. Almost all the schools, none of these playgrounds are maybe 1, maybe 2 or 3 now with the reconstructions are handicapped accessible. These kids deserve that. And if there are typical children who would like to go to that school and learn with those children, I think that would be awesome. But I think it needs to be their school, where they don't need to adapt. Other people need to adapt, because it's just not fair to them. You know, they deserve the same as everyone else. So again, I do want to thank you for bringing this to the forefront. I do appreciate it. You know, this is their home. This is their district. This is their city. These are their friends in these neighborhoods. These kids should be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Ms. Pinolo.
Thank you. Yes, I do agree that the district needs it. I don't know. It'd take a lot of renovation for the annex, because it is so tiny and constricting in there, so it would take much renovation. But I do believe that they do need it. But I'd like to be able to, before a vote would be taken, I'd like to look into the regulations and the standards that are required to do such a thing. I don't know, is that unrealistic?
Yeah, well, I think there's a motion on the floor to explore the end use as laid out by Mr. Knight. It was seconded by Ms. Grant. I think that process will play out as we start to go through. And like I said, we may or may not get to a point where it's not feasible, or we can't do it for whatever other reason. But I think we're beyond the point of, you know, the motion is that becomes the end use for it. To your point specifically.
Read back the motion?
I'm sorry?
Can Ms. Liss read back the motion?
Certainly.
Mr. Knight moved to approve the end use of the Pawtucket Annex be used as a state-of-the-art special needs campus.
Okay, so that's a very specific. If it were to explore and move toward, you know, that wouldn't, you know what I'm trying to say?
Well, I think,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Knight.
Mr. Chairman, I remind everyone that the Northern Rhode Island Collaborative used the St. James School, parochial school in Manville, Rhode Island at one point. So we could, our structure would work. Excuse me.
I don't want to veer too far off the road, but this is the end result, or the end use 7, 10, 12 years down the road. It's giving us an option at this point to start a conversation, a broader conversation with the Department of Ed, with the School Building Authority, with our team at Collier's, with our team at Torado Associates and Antonozzi, to say, if we were to use this campus as a special needs state-of-the-art campus, what does that look like? Can we do it? How much to do it right? And that's all information that comes back to this committee, and then we formulate a go-forward strategy from there. But this isn't to say that there is going to, I think this authorizes conversation and see where that conversation leads, as opposed to, we may hear from RIDE that it's not something that they will allow. So I wouldn't get too caught up in the wording of the motion as it relates to, you will get your questions answered, Ms. Pinolo, as we start this process.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else on the annex and use?
So this is slightly related to it. So prior to joining the committee officially, in the first go round in 2018, it was to my understanding that the annex was being prepped to be used for JW's more permanent space. I know we kind of went away from those plans. I am curious to know if there are any other thoughts of whether or not the plan for JMW is to stay within that Jenks complex, or if it is to continue to grow. And that's something that doesn't need to be answered right now, but it is a general question I do have. I think this is a great idea. I did share a little bit of Ms. Manolo's hesitation in the sense of if we was making a decision today that was gonna now tie us to permanently making sure this comes to place without having further information on what we could potentially do with this space or any other options that are out there as well. But I think according to what you said, Mr. Chairman, if we're just voting to explore these possibilities and to explore it in a serious manner, then that is something I am comfortable with.
Thank you, Mr. Lobby. And your point on JMW is heard loud and clear and well taken. And we will, I will look to put that item on an agenda in the near future here to have that broader conversation as well. All right, anything else? All right, there's a motion on the floor to approve the end use of the Pawtucket Annex as the Pawtucket School Department state-of-the-art special needs campus. It's been seconded. No further discussion. Roll call on the approval, please.
Ms. Vinello,
Yes.
Ms. Doobie,
Yes.
Ms. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Larby,
Yes.
Mr. Marino,
Yes.
Mr. Charbonneau.
Yes. All right, we are at the end of our agenda discussion items. As we normally do, I'll open it up to any of the items: monthly vendor, overtime report year to date, budget transfers, maintenance work orders. Does anyone have anything? Going once, twice. All right, there being no discussion, superintendent's update. Superintendent McWilliams.
Yes, thank you. I just want to wish everyone a very happy holiday season. It's hard to believe that it's right around the corner, but we are glad that the new year is right around the corner because we are all ready to close the book on 2020 in hopes that 2021 will be better. So I wish you all a very happy and healthy holiday season, and we look forward to the new year. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, school committee member updates. Ms. Bonolo.
I would just like to wish everybody a happy and healthy holiday, whatever their holiday is. And I look forward to seeing them sometime in person in the year 2021.
Thank you, Ms. Bonolo. Ms. Grant?
First of all, I just want to thank everyone for the holiday of joy the other day from Hasbro. Thank you to Hasbro, the teachers, the staff, everyone who contributed to make it such a magical day for all of our students. I just want to thank you all for just kind of working so hard this year. Distance learning hasn't been easy. Zoom hasn't been easy. Quarantine hasn't been easy. And you know, I just want to thank everyone for just kind of trying to roll with it as best as possible. And I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday and hopefully a good new year. Better than this year. Good night.
Mr. Larby.
Yeah, I just want to just say happy holidays to everyone, and just once again show my appreciation to all the hard work that is being done to educate our students and be a big community partner for the city of Pawtucket. So thank you all, and I hope that each and every one of you, even our administrators who I know works over the breaks, are able to take a few days off and like really have a vacation. So enjoy yourselves and be safe.
Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask if we could adjourn in memory of Lieutenant Russell K. Freeman, who died. He was a lieutenant at the ACI. He died this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Mr. Marino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to express a happy holiday and a happy New Year to everyone. And as we reflect on the year that we had, so I think it's obvious. Teachers are underappreciated and overworked. Heroes throughout imaginable of reality that had all of us have a face, and so I just wanted to express my gratitude. Thank you.
Ms. Doobie.
I was on mute. I want to echo what other people have said. I think that Pawtucket has charted our own course through this pandemic, and we are right now right in the thick of it. And not, I mean, the end is on the horizon, but we're not really as close to it as I think some people think we are. I think we are in some of the hardest weeks, and I really want to just say to all of our family in Pawtucket, our families of our students and our teachers, that I really wish people a safe holiday. I know it's going to be hard for a lot of people, and I hope that some of the grief that is some people have already felt is not expanded upon. So I wish you all a happy holiday.
Thank you, Ms. Doobie. And I will try and keep it brief. But it has been, certainly for me, it has been the most difficult year on this committee. I am impressed every day with my colleagues on this committee who lead with integrity and compassion. And you know, I've also seen our district leader and Dr. McWilliams lead the same way. I'm incredibly proud to be on this committee. The relationships that we've built with our partners throughout the district. And I want to mention our union partnerships and certainly with Deb Finley, whose folks go above and beyond every day and you know, play such a critical role to the overall success of the district. And I want to make sure that I recognize Deb and her membership. And I also want to recognize Ron Beaupre and the Teachers Union. Ron has been you know, unwavering in his support of his membership, of our students, of our community, and really, in dealing with him, you know, he said 7-8 years ago when I went for an endorsement, one of his statements was, we don't always have to agree, but we need to have the conversation and we need to be fair. I have called Ron countless times throughout this year on a wide range of topics. He has answered the phone. We have agreed on some, we have disagreed on others, but he has been fair. And that is the success of the Pawtucket School Department. The fact that we are all able to have the honest conversations, to choose to disagree or to agree, and to move forward under that shared vision of delivering the best educational experience for our students. And so I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that as well. I wish you all a happy holiday. And I thank you for all that you've done for the students in Pawtucket this year. And with that, Mr. Knight, I will let you make the motion to adjourn.
Damn. Mr. Chairman, I motion to adjourn that we adjourn in memory of Russell K. Freeman, a correctional officer lieutenant who passed away this past week.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Knight that we adjourn in the memory of Lieutenant Russell Freeman. Second, Marino. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.